Hi. So I thought it would be helpful, following on from the last blog about depression, to think about how we think and what we can do to change our thinking. Now, in depression, I said in the blog that often underneath what's happening chemically in our brain and the symptoms that we get are faulty thinking patterns, and they've come from childhood or from situations that we've been in where we've got ingrained thinking that doesn't help us. And by changing that thinking, we can change how we feel. So I thought it would be helpful to go into a little bit more detail about that today and just explain a little bit how that works in practice. Now, this can apply to a lot of mental health problems, not just depression, also anxiety and stress-related kind of things as well as a lot of the more severe mental health problems. This can play a part in helping. So the way that we work, what we tend to do is to look at our behaviour and our feelings. So if you're pushed today about what's been going on, you're likely to say something like, "Oh, I feel really stressed. I feel really angry. I feel really upset. I feel something." Or you may be frustrated that you have a behaviour that seems to go round and round in circles that you just can't break out of. So, for example, comfort eating or some sort of addiction of some sort, some way that you know you react time and time again that actually isn't healthy for you. And we can easily tend to focus on those behaviours and those feelings, and that can be good. So things like relaxation, meditation, exercise, all those things can be really helpful in helping us um, get some relief, get some temporary relief, if you like, for the problems that we're having. The issue is that we don't get permanent relief because there are underlying things going on in our brains and in our being that tie into that. So behind feelings and behaviours are thoughts. Now, I know I certainly didn't used to stop and think about what I was thinking, but once I realised that actually my thinking mattered, it was something that I've learned to do. It's something that I developed over time, noticing what I'm thinking about. So it's helpful to stop when you notice a behaviour or a feeling that's repetitive or out of proportion or affecting you where you don't want it to. Start to notice what you're thinking about. Now, scientific research suggests that we have thousands and thousands of thoughts every day, most of which we don't notice, and about 80% of those thoughts are negative. Which is amazing, isn't it? That we've become so focused on the negative. I suppose it's not surprising when you think about the world that we live in and the media and the things that we're fed, that we have all these negative patterns of thinking going on without us often noticing it. So some of the negative thoughts that might be feeding in are things like, I need to please people to be of value. I'm stupid. I'll always fail. Nothing good will happen to me. People don't like me. Um, Something bad is going to happen today. I'm stupid. Lots of things that just come round and round in our heads, and we don't actually stop and notice them. So the first thing that can be really helpful is taking notice of what you're thinking about. Just, what did I think about in the last 5 or 10 minutes? Is there something at night that stops me going to sleep that I repeatedly think about? Write it down, what it is. Try and identify what it is that's going round and round in your head. Now, CBT, which is available in a lot of general practices in the UK and around the world in medical provision, is something that works at this kind of level. So CBT is cognitive behaviour therapy. Cognitive or cognition is how we think. So we're changing how we're thinking to change how we're behaving. So if we can start to change some of those negative thinking patterns for more positive thinking patterns, then we're likely to get better behaviour and better feelings as a result of that. And CBT can be really effective. and it's definitely worth thinking about. There's lots of things online, courses that you can access, often for free, that help you learn the principles of CBT. It's basically remembering that we have pathways in our brains, if you like. So if you've had a thought that repeats itself over and over again, then in our brains we get a pattern, we get a neuronal pathway that is ploughed out with that thought, and our brains go down that pathway. We go down that pathway without even thinking about it. I suppose a good example is learning to drive. So when you first learn to drive, you have to think really hard about what you're doing. So you have to think about, do I use the gear stick now, or what am I doing with the brake, and how does the steering wheel? Am I adjusting correctly? How big's the car? So many things to think about when we first learn to drive. But then fairly quickly, as we become more confident and competent and get used to it, I can quite easily drive while I'm thinking about something else. I don't noticeably think, oh, I have to get the gear stick now. I have to press on the brake now. I just do it. It comes automatically. And that happens with a lot of things in our lives without us realizing it. We have an automatic default that our brain will go down because of what's happened in the past, our families, our upbringing, our culture, the media, all sorts of things people said that feed into these patterns in our brain. So what we're trying to do is to identify what some of those patterns are. Now, there's an area in us that we often don't get to, which is even deeper than our thoughts, and that's our core belief systems. So our core belief systems are right at the centre of our being, if you like. And some examples of core beliefs would be something like, there's something wrong with me, not just something wrong with what I do, there's something wrong with me, something fundamentally wrong with me as a person. And that's often linked with shame, often from something difficult that's happened to us or that we've been involved with. Or it may be that I'm of no worth, that fundamentally as a person I'm not worth anything. Or my identity, I don't have an identity. I can't work out what my fundamental core identity is. Really deep beliefs that feed into our thinking without us realizing it. And if we really want to get long-term change, we need to get to those belief systems. So the next step on from thinking about our thinking patterns is, well, what do I fundamentally believe that is driving that? Do I fundamentally believe that I'm not worth anything as a person? Do I fundamentally believe I don't have value? Do I fundamentally believe that that I'm shameful, that I'm guilty, that there's something wrong with me? And if we can identify the beliefs, then we can start to do something to change those. And it's about working out what's true and what isn't true. Now, for a lot of people, working out what's true and isn't true is quite difficult because there are so many things out there that we don't really know what to believe. And I guess for me, my faith plays a huge part here. So actually saying, there's more than just me as a physical, emotional being. Where's God in this? Who's bigger than the world that we live in? Who's bigger than all of this? What's really true? And so I believe that my God who created the universe, loves me. That he loves me whatever I do. And that he's created me as a unique person. There's nobody else in the world like me, which is true. There's nobody else with the same DNA that I have, the same fingerprint that I have. So I'm a one-off. I'm a one-off creation, and there's a place for me in the world that no one else can fill, which is amazing, isn't it? And so I look to the Bible. I look to what the Bible says is true, what God says is true for me, about me, that I'm loved so much that he came as Jesus and died for me. to restore that relationship back. So that gives me that sense um, of core foundational confidence that I'm special, I'm loved, I have value, I have worth. My identity is in what he says about me. Now, that doesn't always pan out in life because of all the other things that have fed in. And I can maybe give you an example of how this works for my own life. So I had a period of time when I was very anxious and jittery. I was working too hard. I was basically trying to please people because I thought that if I pleased people, they would like me. That if I could do lots of work in the day and tick a box at the end of the day, that I could see what I'd done, that gave me more worth or value. And I was basically exhausted. I was juggling too many things and running around trying to do too many things and getting my value and worth from the wrong places. And I basically, this tied in with depression that I had. I had to stop work for a period of time, and I had to do something about that. I had to start to think about where that was coming from. And I realised that I think maybe it's partly doing medicine and feeling that what you do as your job is your identity. What you do to help people in the day is what gives you value. And no, I couldn't do it. And so my value was in question. So I had to be really honest about what my thinking was and what my core belief was, which was I'm of value if I produce something. I'm of value if I work. People value that intrinsically I'm of value if I'm doing something, and if I'm not doing something, I don't have the same value. And we know that that's not true, don't we? Because actually, how unfair is that? All the people in the world, if we measure everybody by what they achieve. So I actually went back to, okay, what do I really believe? Actually, I'm believing some stuff here that's not true. I'm going to write down what's really true. So I wrote down something like, I believe that I'm of value whether I work or not. I believe that the truth is that I'm of worth, and I have a purpose in this earth whether I'm a GP or not. That my value is not determined by what I do. That I'm loved even if I don't do anything. And I had to work really hard at reminding myself of that. I actually wrote it out. I actually wrote it out and stuck it up on the wall. I actually wrote it on the wall in our hallway, and I would read it over and over and over, reminding myself of what was really true. And over time, my thinking started to change, and that massively affected my emotions and my physical body. Some physical problems that I'd had, like my heart racing and my stomach tightening up, those things improved as I started to get a grasp on what was really true. So I think to sum up this section on this mental health series, I would say it's really important that we go beneath the surface again, that we don't just take our behaviours and our feelings as being the most important thing. If we can start to see our behaviours and our feelings as markers, if you like, as flags for something not being quite right underneath, then that can be really helpful. So we can do the really practical things, the exercise, the relaxation, meditation, medication if we need it, things that help us on that surface level. That's good. But also start to look underneath. Notice what you're thinking about. And from what you're thinking about, start to think, what do I really believe? And what is really true? Because what is really true will work whether I believe it or not. And if we can pinpoint what's really true and then choose to believe that, choose to agree with that, whether we feel like it or not, we will find with time that our feelings catch up. And suddenly we notice, a bit like driving the car, that we're thinking in a different way. We don't actually notice it anymore because we've retrained our brains, we've rewired our brains into a different way of thinking. So I hope that's been helpful. Next week, we're going to think a little bit more about anxiety. So I'll see you then.